We knew that mom prioritized us and work, and both were valid. And I never heard her say, I have to go to work. I always heard her say, I get to go to work. And that is how I always talk to my children now. Mommy and daddy work very hard. We're both entrepreneurs and we both work 7 days a week, but we show up, we hold space, we spill love into them every single second, and we get to do it all. And that is the distinction.
The woman you just heard is Jamie Hess, the daughter of legendary Good Morning America host Joan Lunden. Connie, we just listened to this podcast and now we're recording an intro to it. So I want to ask you, what did you love about this podcast? I'll tell you
Well, I
mine.
loved a lot of things, but to be honest, part of it is because I fangirl over Joan Lunden. I mean, she was America's mom for 17 years on Good Morning America. I personally always loved Joan Lunden, but there was so many other lessons we learned too, weren't there?
I have several. One is that Joan Lunden was so vulnerable about her whole life, career, and success, and is still in the mode of learning and teaching, and is a beautiful exemplar of how do you be a real person with real imperfections, her own parenting, her own grandmothering, and still wonderful, wonderful woman, and their relationship was delicious and nutritious to listen to. I just loved the way they were with each other. And I also loved Jamie's articulation of how do you take a messy life and turn it into something magnificent.
Yeah, Jamie was a chip off the old block. I mean, she has taken her journey from addiction to recovery and turned it into something really positive. She's living in gratitude. She's teaching other people how to live in gratitude. And she's created, an amazing podcast around that idea with Gratitudeology, as well as these businesses. I mean, she's an entrepreneur. She's a busy lady. She's a QVC host, for goodness sake.
I know. And Joan has written these 10 books, but she's going to write another book. She says it's her
Yeah.
memoir and can't wait for that one. So let's take a listen. Welcome, Joan Lunden and Jamie Hess. It is our absolute honor to have you on this podcast. We are so thrilled that you have taken the time to do this.
An amazing mother-daughter duo. We're grateful that you can be with us today.
Oh, it's so exciting to be with you guys. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for both being here.
We've been steeped in your work, and Ashley, our producer, prepared these incredibly detailed notes and links, and it's been really enriching to reread and listen. Jamie, I've listened to your Gratitudeology podcasts. I've watched so many things that both of you have done, and it's really exciting that we're in the same field of being good and doing good and helping others do more good. Connie and Ashley and I were talking this morning about, oh my God, there's so many things that we would like to talk about. The challenge will be, what should we talk about?
We have listened to many of the Gratitudeology podcasts. As we were talking this morning, there's some things that we've been learning about, and then we've been learning about you learning through the different decades and eras of your life. So I think that's the main topic today. What have we learned that we can teach each other and others and grow from it?
And in that spirit, one of the quotes that you had referenced in your most recent book, Joan, was, you don't inspire others by being perfect. You inspire them with how you deal with your imperfections. Mm-hmm. That theme, both of you and we completely identify with. It is through our journeys together. We are in different decades of our lives. We've got somebody in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And man, oh man, have we learned a bunch and continually learn through our mistakes. And I can't believe I forgot that. And I can't believe I stepped in it again. I'm excited about what we can share so that we can help more people. So what are you learning of late, this morning, yesterday, today? It doesn't matter. Both of you have so much to share.
Mom, you want to start?
What, age before beauty?
Even around the quote, Joan, like what inspired you to feature that right up front? Because it caught both of our attention when we saw it.
I had a book agent years ago. I had done one book called Good Morning, I'm Joan Lunden, but I wrote it after I'd only been on Good Morning America in front of a national audience for I don't know, like 5 years or so. And then I wrote a book about going through this physical metamorphosis. Like I was approaching 40 years old. I had 3 babies. I affectionately called out that extra weight that I hadn't taken off yet, my baby weight. But every woman understands that. And I just thought, you know what? I'm 39, and as I turned 40, I remember there's a magazine cover with the Charlie's Angels, and it was fit, fabulous, and 40. And I said, I want to be that. So I literally took on my fitness and my health like in a major way. And I wrote my first real book that I wrote, Healthy Cooking with Joan Lunden. And I was incredibly honest in it, almost like raw, honest, which when you're talking about how unhappy you are with how you look and how you're challenged every day to try to camouflage yourself. And it was such a huge success that I think in that I learned that the more honest you are, the more candid you are, the more you'll get through to your audience and connect with them. I saw it all through my tenure at Good Morning America. I didn't cover things up. I sat behind a very low coffee table. So you saw my pregnancies, and there's that fine line, I will say, to not oversharing, but being so open with people. I always used to say, and Jamie will remember this, how people reacted to me out in the street. It wasn't just a familiar, oh, I'm familiar with her. I saw her on the, it was almost a familial, like I was a aunt, cousin, the girl down the street. Like they would often, Jamie will tell you this, throw their arms around me. But I learned that early on, and I've carried it through in all of my books. And when it came time to write my last one, why did I come into this room? I thought, okay, you're going to talk about leaky bladders and hot flashes. You better be funny. You better bring a sense of humor. And while I had brought candidness to all my books, I don't think I'd ever brought that sense of humor. I literally had to give myself permission, just mentally and emotionally, give myself permission to sit down at my laptop and say, come on, you could be funny. You got to use every mechanism here to engage, particularly women over 40, 50 years old, and say, hey, we're all in this together. It's happening to all of us. So let's just talk about it.
Just say it out loud. Yep.
Say it out loud. And Jamie, I don't even know what to say. She's such a chip off the old block, as they say, such the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. It's like mind blowing.
Well, Jamie, you're using that same idea, obviously, in Gratitudeology. You're taking people's pain. People are opening things up that are almost surprising sometimes when I listen. It's just, wow, taking pain and turning it into this progress and this achievement. It's great.
Yeah, and it all started doing the exact same thing my mom was just saying that she does, which is making your mess your message. And I learned that.
Yeah.
I learned from watching her that the more vulnerable you are, I call her the OG momfluencer.
Yeah,
Before
she
that was a thing.
Mhm.
And so now myself, I worked in public relations for almost 20 years first before I became an influencer and a media personality and all the things I do now, podcaster. But I've always really looked at her as the model of how to really just show people your life, warts and all, and have it makes them feel like they know you, they love you even more. I think we all got really kind of lulled into that varnished reputation thing on Instagram. It's like, yeah, everything has to be perfect. You have to show this perfect front. And I think we're moving away from that. I think people are tired of it. But myself, how I show up on social media since the beginning, and I think it's why my account grew so quickly, is I was always super honest. I started as a fitness influencer,
Yeah.
but I always said, hey, I'm not a trainer. I'm not a registered dietitian. My husband and I are just two wellness geeks, but we don't do it all right, and I gain weight, I lose weight. People used to come with me to Soul Cycle or Barry's Boot Camp, and they'd say, I don't want to ride next to you. You're a fitness influencer. I said, I never said I was good. I just said I liked it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I've always been very real. And I think that's made me relatable. And so in this podcast, I did the exact same thing. I took literally what was the darkest part of my entire life, which was my addiction in my teens and 20s, and turned that into the starting point for this entire project.
For our listeners, if you haven't yet, the first Gratitudeology podcast is the two of you. So besides being mom and daughter, which was very cool for me because I also have a very successful, amazing daughter, and listening to your back and forth and digging in deep on, to your point, the darkest stuff, not just the easy stuff, was really relatable. I see that in your social media accounts. People like you, Joan, and people may throw their arms around you, but they're doing it in social media too. They love that you're picking up your grandkids at the bus stop.
Oh,
You know?
gosh. I looked at the when I first met, I'd had a whole week because I got a call from Jamie. My nanny just left, and I have to go out of town next week with George. It's a big business trip. And I said, I'll be there. And so I went to Pennsylvania, and the very first day, I took her younger, Asher, and her dog, Bodie, and we went to meet Mason, the older son, on the bus. That post reached 1.9 million people. And I'm like, I don't understand how that even happens.
It happens because it's real. One of the things that I love about what we're doing together, all of us are doing this work of being good people and helping other people be gooder, be better, is let's keep telling more stories of, oh, here's how I did. I helped out my beautiful daughter with her kids. Man, oh man, I want to be a great grandfather one day. We're trying to figure out, could I be a better mom? Could I be a better
Yeah.
person? Well, listen and watch them. They're not perfect, but they show the beautiful qualities of love and generosity and authenticity and vulnerability,
Yeah.
which makes them heliotropic. This is what we love about you guys. I wanted to ask you, Jamie, what does your mom do now that you're raising kids that you absolutely love so that other mothers and grandmothers can go, ooh, I got to do more of that? And, or if you don't mind, not so much, so that mothers and grandmothers can go, okay, I can hear that from Jamie.
Yeah. Honestly, to speak to the latter, we really don't have that. Because my mom is the polar opposite of that type of the grandma who's like meddling or has a lot of opinions is don't raise them that way. I'm going to teach you. That's just not my mom. My mom, since the get, has been the most supportive. And I'm not just saying this because she's here. She is the most supportive, most loving. She is my best friend and my sister's best friend. We're all best friends. We call her when we have a good day, a bad day. She's the first call, and it's been like that forever. And she's honestly the archetype of what you would want. In fact, I've always said it's actually amazing. My sisters and I have gone and had our careers in different places, and we lived in Los Angeles and this place and that place. And my mom was even always the type that if one of us was off working in LA and it was Christmas or whatever it was, and she was like, "You know what? If it's too expensive to come home on the plane right now for Thanksgiving and you could have a great opportunity to make time and a half at your job or whatever, do what's best for you. I'm not gonna guilt you
Mm,
I don't
into
guilt
mm.
her.
you have to be at this dinner table or you don't love me." Like,
Mhm.
she's so supportive of us building our lives as adults. And I think it's really what's fostered us into being capable, confident, ambitious, hungry adults.
Love that. I want to know when I'm doing it right. I think I know when I'm doing it right. Keep doing it. And or any corrections along the way. You said stuff that I don't want to let slide, which is she doesn't point and meddle and say you shouldn't and why don't you and guilt you out. Those are not small things that a lot of people do. I'm
Mhm.
glad she doesn't. But Joan, that's wisdom. That's 7 kids and a whole lot of life to have learned that.
Does that come easy to you, Joan, or are there times where you really find yourself biting your
Oh,
tongue?
are you kidding? That parenting, let's just call it what it is. It's the hardest job in the
Sure.
world, period. And it comes with no
Mhm.
instruction book. You have to just feel your way through it. And I'm a big quote person. I love quotes. I
You
collect
are.
quotes. I have a lot of in every one of my books, I load them with quotes. And because I'm looking for quotes for my autobiography all the time, you'll notice I have sticky notes all over my desk as I get them,
Perfect.
and they'll
Mhm.
eventually make their way into the book. But this one I saved just to talk to my husband about. Don't handicap your children by making their lives easy. Like,
Mm,
hello. And I think that's one of the
mm.
hardest things to do as a
I get it.
parent because we all want to make our lives easy and as devoid as problem or heartache as we possibly can. But I think that in recent times, it's become the norm for parenting. I was a professor at Lehigh for a couple of years. And I remember when we went into our kind of like training session at the beginning of the year, and one of the pet peeves of all the professors was when a student got a bad grade and the parent called to complain. It's like, wait a minute, you send them away to college to learn to be on their
Right.
own. And parents just are so defensive. They never want to own any bad thing that their kids do. We do them a disservice by doing that. And it's very easy to talk about this in retrospect at
Mhm.
my age, but
Mhm.
for anyone who's listening, our kids need to start learning how to resolve conflict. You know, my husband owns summer camps for kids up in the state of Maine, and the kids come for 7 weeks. And I've had other people say, "Really? People send their kids away for 7 weeks?" I said, "Yeah, 7 weeks of no phone, no social
Great.
media, no technology, and they have to do what we used to do when we grew up. The only thing we had to play with when we grew up, it was called outside.
Outside. Other kids.
And we'd go outside and play. And I think most parents would say today that they would be really hard pressed, and that's putting it mildly, hard pressed to try to take their kids away from electronics and social media for 7 weeks. And it's therapeutic for their minds to get disconnected from that. And they also learn, because they don't have mommy around overprotecting them, to resolve conflicts, and that they have to be cognizant of other people's needs in this bunk of 8 little boys. I've come to learn that there's so much they learn aside from shooting a better basketball or something.
In
Oh, wait,
this we
and
can't.
wait here. And this summer, Jamie's son Mason is going to be at camp.
Yay.
I am so excited, and we've been getting everything ready for him. I just feel that it is the most character building experience
Sure.
to go have your first summer away like that. And just like my mom said, my biggest piece of excitement around it all is that he will be away from electronics. I
Yeah.
am of the full mind that electronics rot their brains. It's ironic because I'm a social media influencer for a living, but I think that we can use social media for good, not evil. And I do not think, though, that it is designed for the brain of an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
So we're very mindful about screen time. I'm very lucky. My husband is 20 years older than me, and we have the most beautiful, wonderful relationship. We went on our first date and got engaged 90 days later, and we've been together 13 years ever since. But one thing that's really cool is he is just from a different generation when it comes to that stuff, and he does not suffer fools, and he does not put up with it. And the kids are outside with him, and they're planting gardens, and they're helping him mow the lawn, and they're helping him cook and bake and
It's so great.
fix the car. It's
Yeah.
so great. These are the things they'll remember for the rest of their lives. And I also think that the alternative, sitting inside in a screen, can literally do brain damage. I'm just grateful. I'm grateful because it's also hard as a parent. I give parents a lot of credit. It's easy to hand them the tablet and they're quiet and you're doing your things, but it's hard to make the tough choice to get off your
Yeah.
own butt and go take them outside and do something, but it's so important.
I must
I
say,
love
I
that you
did
were
the
doing that.
opposite. I did the opposite. I married a man 11 years younger than me, and that's working out pretty good. Statistically,
Look.
we should die about the same time. But it didn't make any difference because he wasn't some young, irresponsible guy. He runs summer camps for children. So I literally have my house run by a camp director.
I love
And
that.
but he's also a really sweetheart of a human being.
And a
I mean,
hands-on dad.
having met and a hands-on dad, but also the secret to life is hang out with good people, choose good partners, whomever they are, choose good partners in your life, find good company, be good company. Jeff is good company. I can say that because I've spent enough time with him to say this is a good man. So to your point, Jamie, finding a good man to partner with is really important. Joan, finding a good partner.
Yeah. Boy, I really did. I found such an upstanding guy. So upstanding. I remember when I was first dating him and my hairdresser, he'd come into the show a couple of days, and my hairdresser one day, who was quite a little partying individual at the time, said, "Your husband's so straight and conservative and upstanding. I feel dirty just being around him."
I'll just say that Jeff coming into our house and our life when I was a teenager
Yeah.
restored my faith in men. I was in that very cynical time of my teenage
Mhm.
years where boyfriends aren't particularly faithful, and you start getting a lot of ideas about guys that maybe aren't so great, that maybe they're all bums. You get cheated on a couple times, you're 15, 16 years old, and you're like, this is for the birds. And having Jeff in my sisters and my life over the years has been such a formative, wonderful, loving piece of the puzzle that we just feel as lucky as she does that he's in all of our lives.
I love that you
Great.
said that. To me, the insight is, again, I like to learn from watching people, exemplars. I can be that. I want to be a better human by watching others who are good humans. And when you said that about Jeff, which is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, don't make assumptions about all people because of one no good Nick. And
Mhm.
conversely, if you can find an exemplar, if she or he can do and be that, you and I can do and be that. If she can do it, I can do it. If he can do it, I can do it.
Yeah. Jeff's the behind the scenes guy compared to the both of you. Is there anything else specific other than his parenting and just his overall goodness? Can you think of any specific life lesson he brought to
Well,
you or to the family?
first of all, I thank his mother all the time for raising such an
Oh,
amazing
yeah.
young man. And he was raised in a family that honored honorableness and honored perseverance in their studies and in sports. They were all like award-winning athletes. They all played college sports, all four of them. And I watched Jeff, and he always says, like, it's so amazing what you do. I could never do that. And I said, I for a second couldn't do what you do, because I sometimes will
Yeah.
go in and sit in his office and I'll watch him with 5 9-year-olds in front of him who just TP'd something or did something.
Yeah.
And I just marvel at how he deals with them. And he'll say, what do you think your punishment should be? And they'll say, I think we should pick up sticks, and I think we should pick up trash. And he doesn't deliver
Yeah.
like he brings them in. He like the learning moments. And then I listen to him talk to parents. Oh my God. Like call after call. I watch him sometimes when he gets in his golf cart and he drives around to the different fields where things are happening, because there's 360 boys, but they're divided into 3 camps, much younger, middle, and older. I'll see him go out to a field where he'll say, well, I saw that that counselor wasn't really doing what he should be doing, but I don't go tell him you're doing it wrong. I jump out of the cart and I get into the game and I show him how to do stuff and let him learn by example. And I get the boys excited and I get the thing going again. He understands leadership starts from the top and it filters down, and really good leaders know how to set the example. And everyone knows that he expects honorableness, and he expects all of his senior people, all those teachers and counselors who come back summer after summer, and they then filter it down to the next level, down to the new young college kids who are just coming into the situation for the first time, and who I like see them in that training week thinking, next week you're going to have 5 8-year-olds hanging off of you. And by the end of the summer, you're going to leave here and you are going to be such a better father. And you're going to have more patience. You're going to have more understanding. It's just, they grow into these wonderful young men right in front of my eyes, these 19, 20, 21-year-old men.
And lucky Mason's going to be hanging off of one of
Oh
those
my
guys.
God. Mason, how old is Mason?
He's 8 years old.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah. He's so excited.
And her sister, Lindsay, next one down, has a little girl and a little boy. The little girl goes to Jeff's girls' camp, Trip Lake, and the little boy, Leo, goes to Takaho. So the little cousins are going to be running around as well.
But think of the power of role models
Role models.
and that ecosystem of honorableness. Talk about be the sun.
He shows them respect in every, he shines the light on people so that they're better people. It seems like a real exemplar. I mean, he doesn't just own camps. He teaches leaders. He grows leaders. That's a big accomplishment in life.
Again, I'm thrilled to have met him and we know him, and now I can understand why he's so powerful. But what we want is for anyone listening to this to go, I can be like Jeff. I mean, he's not a unicorn. He's a very wonderful human being. Great. So let's aspire to that. Jane, were you going to say something?
Well, I was going to say what's neat about, so as we discussed earlier, my husband's a little bit older, but I think what's cool is that in this stage of his life, because we have little kids, God bless
Right.
my husband. He
Right.
has grown kids too. They're in their 30s and 20s, but he's gotten to do it all over again. And I think what's cool, if you are somebody who maybe you didn't live up to that standard you would have liked to have set for yourself, you can just wake up tomorrow and do it then. Because my husband says every day, I'm getting this time around to be the father that maybe I wasn't fully prepared to be when I had my first round of kids in my 20s. He's a great dad. He's a great dad to them, but he was a kid. Oh, he was a
Yeah.
kid. And this time around, because everyone's, oh, I can't believe how hands-on he is. He's so great. Usually when a slightly older dad has the kids with the younger wife, he's like, great, I'll have them, but you got to take care of them. And my husband's like, no, it's not going down like that. We're 50-50 on this. And he's enjoying getting to be the best version of himself at this age. And
I
it's
can see
really
that.
cool to see.
I
Love
can, and
that.
Joan, I see that with, I don't know about you, but for me as a brand new grandmother, I find myself in that same opportunity to be in a much more relaxed state, taking more time, listening, always engaged when I'm present versus the busy working mom who I thought I did a really good job, but it was still different. It felt like always a race. And now it doesn't feel like a race. It feels like I just get to soak up the joy.
Well, I can obviously speak to raising 3 girls when I was in the middle of one hell of a race,
Yes,
doing a
you were.
national early morning program and like always 8 other things at the same time. I'll never forget. It was you, Jamie. We were at the ice skating rink and you were down ice skating with everyone. And I was up, it was after school. And I was in these metal stands. When you run up those metal stands, it like just echoes in the whole place. And there were like just hundreds of kids running up and down the stands. The music was blaring. And all of a sudden, Jamie came and tapped me on the shoulder and said, Mommy, I really want you to watch this. I had fallen asleep in the middle of that unbelievably loud, chaotic world. And I felt so guilty and so bad. But that like exemplifies the level of exhaustion that I had back then, that you just put one foot in the front of the other and do it. But I don't think I screwed up any of them. They've grown up to be amazing people, amazing mommies, amazing business people. Then I did it all over again
I know.
with Jeff, and I was at 50. And at 50, we had 2 sets of twins. They're 20 months apart. They're now just 19 years old, and the other 2 are turning 21 in a week. And the second time around, people like just thought I was nuts. Like, you're going to have little kids at this age? I said, first of all, after how I had the first 3, you think this would daunt me at all? And second of all, I'm enjoying life a lot more and I'm capable financially and everything to do this. This is a piece of cake. Well, maybe not a piece of cake. 2 sets of twins. We did a bathroom off the family room with this long bathtub. We put the 4 of them in there and they'd all be sitting in there splashing. And I would lay out on the carpet in the family room 4 towels, 4 Dessitans, 4 diapers, and 4 jammies. And we'd take them out. It was like a production line.
I just remember, I get one set of twins and I just remember that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what an attitude of gratitude and blessings, not hassles. It's not about stress. It's about bring on the tushies, bring on the Dessitin, bring on let's make it fun.
Well, and show up every morning with a smile at 7 o'clock when you probably weren't always feeling like smiling. And I think that's a huge gift to the world because you did give that energy when you came on, because I was a fan. So I know. And yet I know that takes work. And sometimes even walking into an office, you think you've got the right to exhibit what you're feeling, but you didn't have that right.
And I think that's a really important thing to talk about. I knew that when I walked out of my dressing room every morning at 6:45, the last thing I would do is I would look into the mirror and say, smile. That's like the last thing you put on that you're wearing. And it makes such a huge difference. And I knew that the first thing the viewer would really be affected by would be my exuberance for the day. It would be my attitude, even before whatever the news was that I was going to deliver to them. And I really embraced that. And look, I went through sleep deprivation, through having 3 babies, through bringing them to work, changing a diaper before I ran downstairs to get on the air. And I went through a very tough divorce that, because I was in the public eye, it was made very much into the public, and therefore it was acrimonious and much harder than it needed to be. And through all that, I knew that once again, I needed to start that program that day with a smile and an exuberance for the day. And that's what everybody should think about. The way you walk into a room, it's an inside job. It's that, what do they say? The most important things we say all day long are the things that we say to ourselves. And it's true. And you have to tell yourself before you walk into any room, whether it's getting up in front of the PTA, whether it's going into an office meeting, you know what? Whether it's walking in from work into your house at the end of the day,
Right.
how you walk in, your demeanor and your attitude is going to literally affect everybody in that room that you're walking into. And it is something that we can all work on. It is a choice to be happy.
Jamie, I see
Jamie,
you nodding your head.
Yeah, Jamie, chime in on this, because I'd love your opinion, because I've seen you do this on your Gratitudeology podcast, and I know that you got this lesson message from mommy.
I did. And to take us back a beat, when she was saying, like, I tried to be at everything, I had all this guilt. What I remember growing up was her being at every ice skating thing, every horse show, every school concert within reason. And when she couldn't be there, it was because we knew that mom prioritized us and work, and both were valid and both filled her cup. And I never heard her say, I have to go to work. I always heard her say, I get to go to work. And that is how I always talk to my children now. Mommy and daddy work very hard. We're both entrepreneurs and we both work 7 days a week, but we show up, we hold space, we spill love into them every single second, and we get to do it all. And that is the distinction, because what we were just talking about, when my mom was just talking about putting that smile on her face and choosing how she was going to walk into a room on any given day. And look, I live in Pennsylvania now, but I spent 20 years in New York at the height of New York City hustle culture. It was like you got an award for sending the latest email, just being there the most and just pushing yourself the hardest. And that has not completely drained from me, I will admit. However, I can be in such a hyper state and I have 12,000 meetings and I'm super stressed and I'm just like, everything's happening to me, not for me. And then all of a sudden, I remember that all of these things are blessings. If my biggest problem is that I have too much work, too many jobs when so many are unemployed, if my biggest problem is I have too many beautiful kids, I have 2 sons, too many beautiful children to care for when so many women don't. If my biggest problem is I have to remember to do 6 errands around the house when so many people don't have a house, then that is not a problem. And all of a sudden, nothing in my external actual circumstances has changed, but everything inside changes. And I go from feeling overwhelmed to grateful, and my entire ethos changes. And that is the power of gratitude.
I know. That's what we believe. That's what we try and live by. That's what we are trying to teach. That's what hopefully people will be listening to this and will listen to Gratitudeology. They go from stressed to blessed, just the way you articulated. And it's not just how you show up at work. It's how I love that. It's how you show up when you walk in the door, when you walk into any party, I got to go to this networking event. What are you talking about?
Right.
I went to a networking event last night. Well, get your attitude right, Harry. And I did, and it was great. Your point about it's a choice. And Jamie, the point you made about, okay, so you notice it, and then in a split second, you don't need 12 hours and 12 years of therapy. You can go, no, look what I've got. That's what I love about this insight and this work. And if people are listening to this, go, you mean you can do it in a split second? Yeah. You have a choice as to takes practice, but in the split second of the practice. But the practice never ends. I'm still practicing. I did do it last night. I got a podcast. I did.
Because you did it last night, you'll have a little easier time doing it today, because this is what I talk about. Somehow we all understand that in order to get good arms, you got to go to the gym and work your biceps, right? You got to do an exercise to
More
build
than
that
once?
muscle.
You can't go
Right.
just once?
Just once. No, you got to do the exercise consistently to
Right.
build and maintain that muscle. Somehow we don't get it when the muscle's up here. And the deal is this: neurons that fire together wire together. So this is neuroscience. If you want to develop neural pathways that are intuitively, inherently more grateful, you have to practice gratitude. So there's one of two ways to wake up in the morning. You wake up full of anxiety. You're already like, I want to get back in bed. My boss sucks. My kids are difficult. Bah, 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 bah. Or you wake up wired to say, wow, the sky is blue, the grass is green, and I have 2 lungs to breathe with. I'm doing pretty great. That is literally a training. The same way you train in the gym,
Yep.
you
With you, man.
train your brain to do that. But it doesn't happen naturally. So
I
a lot of
know.
the times you say, oh, I know I should be more grateful. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. It's really just about an exercise.
You're preaching to the choir here.
Oh,
We're with you,
absolutely.
girl.
I learned something. There was a book by an author you would like is Brian Luke Seward. He wrote a book called You Can't
Right.
Stop the Waves, but You Can Learn to Surf. You might have read.
Oh, yeah.
And I loved that book. And I used to talk about it in a lot of my speeches when I was on the road with Tony Robbins. Now, he is a grown up hippie in Colorado, teaching at University of Colorado, and never has had a TV. So he didn't really know who I was, but he kept hearing that I was talking about his book. So he got in touch with me and he said, I've never really watched you on TV. I don't own a TV. I'm a hippie that grew up and I now teach a bunch of other hippie kids. And he said, but I'm really happy that my book affected you in such a positive way. I'm about to write another book. Would you do the forward? So the book is called Stressed is Desserts Spelled Backwards. And and I loved what that book was about because when you eat a bunch of sugar, you go on this spiral up. When something hits you and you learn to see it and feel it, and you can feel yourself, like you get really mad and you go out and you get in your car and I'm going to go. If all of a sudden you realize that you're at that point, that's when you have the choice not to go in the spiral downward. And if you can learn to do that, if you can learn to pinpoint those moments where the adrenaline's going through your body and that you're just so upset, if you can learn to be on the lookout for those, and literally in that instant, you can make the choice saying, that's not good for my body physically. It's not good for my brain. It's going to make me have a headache. It's going to make me have tense muscles in my back. And I'm not going there.
And what you're saying is we can allow our crappy moods, our salty behavior in that split second
Yeah.
to be our teacher, to be our reminder. Oh, I was about to get all funky and pissy. Oh, wait.
I don't have to.
I can remember that.
Jamie, do you have any tools you use with your kids to learn this same lesson about gratitude and waking up and leaving for
Yeah.
school in the right frame of mind?
Yeah, we have a family practice. So we have a little room in our house that we call our meditation room. And if we get busy in the morning, the kids will say, Mom, Dad, like we got to do meditation in the meditation room.
Nice.
So we do with our kids 2-minute meditation. And we just use, it's not music, it's actually frequency, but it's resonant with the earth. So you can use music, whatever. We use frequency. And then we do 3 affirmations and 3 gratefuls. So they say 3 things. I am happy, I am brave, I am patient. And then they say 3 things they're grateful for. And you got to keep it simple too. You can't make it too long for children or for grown-ups, to be perfectly frank. But honestly, the simplest things to do are also the simplest to skip. And a lot of people know they should be making a gratitude list in the morning, or maybe they should be doing a 2-minute meditation with their kids. But it's just so easy just to skip by it. But the difference it will make is immeasurable, I promise you. So it's the consistency that really is the key. And what's so cool is that I have people reach out to me all the time on NYC Fit Fam and say, I don't know how you get your kids to do that, or to sit still for meditation, or to eat vegan, and all the things we do. And I say, how I get them to do it? That's what's for dinner, or that's what we're doing. What do you mean? Like, they're 5 and 8. And they're also young enough that they still think we're cool. Come back to me in 5 years, let's be real. But for now, I can instill some good life lessons and practices.
It's really awesome. And to your point, 5 and 8 are not 15 and 18,
Yeah.
nor is it 32 or 42. So as we keep getting older and keep learning, I'm just as interested in what are you doing now for each other at this age? Both of you are at an age where, okay, we've done so much good. We've learned so much. We've overcome so much from breast cancer to addiction and eating disorders. Really amazing. Okay, so we're now on this journey, rock and roll. What are you learning of late and or sharing and or doing that for those that are in that space, whether it's cancer or addiction, anything that we can help others with? Here's what I learned the hard way.
I can tell you that when it comes to the addiction, we're not here as parents to be our kid's best friend. And it's really hard. Sometimes it's so much easier to say yes than it is to say no. And especially when you have both parents working, everyone's exhausted, everyone doesn't have enough time to really do everything. And kids are great at wearing you down, and they keep asking you. And that old phrase, everybody else does it. By the way, everybody else's kids don't actually do it. Maybe
Yeah.
all the other kids that their parents are like lax with them do it. And you have to ask questions. And
Yep.
and you have to be a snoop. Now, I will tell you that I would go into my girls' rooms, and they'll tell you when they were young, and I would snoop around because that's our job as a parent. Now, there's a certain sense of giving them a little responsibility and a little respect of their, but as when they're teenagers, I would go into the room and I'd find their stash. I always found their stash. But when they ask you to do things, you really have to ask questions these days. You really have to know what's in that. What are they vaping? And if they're going to be vaping like in college, I remember I said to my daughter, because I have 4 in college right now, and I said, if you do it, don't ever do it during the day. I don't ever want to think that you're going off to class. Don't ever drive when you do anything that's going to change your mind. And then just remember, I want you to research it a little and find out exactly what that's doing to your lungs. You're going to pay the
Right.
consequences. And I got to tell you, 2 daughters who were doing some vaping, they've both stopped. And it wasn't because I yelled at them, it's because I urged them to research it to understand fully what they were doing
Nice.
to their bodies that was going to be possibly incredibly consequential to their health later on and to their longevity.
The two of you did a really brave, vulnerable thing coming out with your story. And I think I saw it on the Today Show. I saw a clip of that. And I obviously listened to the first podcast that you did, Jamie, with Gratitudeology. It was a big one. Was there something that made you both sit down and decide now's the time, or did it just naturally evolve?
I've been sober many years. And so I've made my mess my message for a while now. I'm very comfortable doing that. However, in deciding to do this podcast, that was the genesis of the podcast. Was I believe so fundamentally in this idea of gratitude, and that learning it in recovery, like really letting it permeate my being, that's where I got that kind of feeling of gratitude. Because I believe the people who have seen the darkness see the light that much brighter. And so it was around that time that I got really grateful. Just waking up every day, like, I'm just happy to be here because it didn't have to go down like that. My mom and I had never really closed the loop on her being a part of the end of my addiction. I just went on with the rest of my life. But I decided to do this podcast, and the way the podcast is produced, it's not just a chat show. It's almost done like an audiobook where it's immersive audio theater.
Like a
and
Dateline
there's
story.
narration.
It's a
Yeah,
beautiful storytelling.
like thank you, like investigative journalism type storytelling where you're like, oh, this is compelling. And the reason I did it that way is because I love the Datelines of the world and investigative journalism. But I, especially as a mom, don't really want to be listening to true crime all the time. So I was grappling with, what do I do for the first episode, though? I'm the narrator in all the other episodes. But for the first episode, it's my story. So I can't be the narrator and the subject.
Right.
And I was talking to my girlfriend who has a #1 podcast on iHeart. I respect her. And I said, what should I do about this problem? She said, dumb. What's wrong with you? Call your mom. She was there. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. And I called my mom on a Friday, and she was in the studio with me on a Monday morning. That's how quickly she shows up for
Yeah.
us and says yes. And I was so appreciative of that.
It was a beautiful way to start.
And I can just tell you that, boy, I'll never forget that cold winter night when I had tried and tried and tried to reach Jamie, couldn't reach her. I got in my car and drove from the suburbs into New York City, snowing like crazy, really freezing cold. And she had moved from one apartment to a walk up, which I never was really comfortable with. But now here I am standing out on the street. It's freezing and I'm ringing the bell. She's not answering, but I suspect that she's there. And a guy comes and opens a door that lives in the building. So I go in with him, and now I walk up a flight of stairs, and now I'm pounding on her door. And finally, she opened the door. And I had already at that point called one of our family doctors and asked for the number of a really good interventionist. And I had set it up, and he had come into his office that night. And and Jamie was like, were you in like pajamas or sweatpants?
I was sleeping.
Yeah.
I was sleeping. I'd been awake for several days and I was sleeping. I was not in a good way.
And so I just said, put some boots on and put a coat on. And I took her like that and just dragged her out of that apartment and took her over to this interventionist. And we sat down and he said, I've looked around at different places. I think where you should go is the Karen Institute in Pennsylvania. And the next morning, that's where she was. And she was there for how long, Jamie?
4 months.
Wow.
I went for 30 days and then they suggested I stay in extended care. But the good thing is, and I say this a lot, I had the gift of desperation. I was so ready. I was so grateful that she showed up and I was willing to do anything. And to be honest, all my yets had come true. They say in recovery, when I first went into recovery circles, I wasn't unemployed and unemployable yet. I hadn't lost my family and relationships yet. And at that point, at the very end, my yets had come true. And thank God, because I was out of answers.
So I have a friend who has a grown son who's in rehab and just relapsed. And another friend who's a therapist said to me, which I passed on, that the relapse is good in that if he didn't die, it increases his chances of it being successful. And I know that your journey to recovery was not linear. So if you could speak to it, isn't just, okay, went to recovery and it was all good from then on. This will take some time.
Absolutely. So when I first went into rooms of recovery in 2004, and when she came and knocked down my door, it was 2008. So that was the time period there.
I
So it was
talked to her.
4
I
years of
talked
in
to
and
her
out.
about it many times, but she's such a good talker that she talked me out of it each time.
I know. That's right.
Yeah. I was protecting my addiction, which is what we do when we're sick. But I was in and out and struggling. And I had to discover that my bottom had a trap door in order to be fully ready. And so that might be where your friend's son is.
All I want is for them to know there's hope. You're out and clean and sober, and a mother who never gave up, and an ecosystem of a village that never gave up. And there isn't one simple linear way for any person to recover from anything. So
Addiction is so difficult because what people don't realize is we're not bad people trying to get good. We're sick people trying to get well. And it's a really tough disease. The good news about it is it's also one of the only diseases where you come out on the other side better than you went in if you follow recovery practices and protocols, because it gives you a blueprint for living. I was just teaching my course a couple hours ago, and I had somebody asking me a question on there. She was like, because I'm a coach, and she was like, can I ask you a question? Because sometimes I reference 12-step stuff in there. And she said, can anyone go to that? Because it sounds so helpful. And she's, I don't think I'm an alcoholic. I said, it really is designed for people who are exploring giving up drinking because they have a problem. But I don't disagree. I've thought that a million times. I'm lucky that I'm an alcoholic and an addict. I wouldn't trade it for anything because now it delivers a daily blueprint for living that's very useful in the rest of my life.
Well, and you've taken all that pain, even as a family, and you've turned it into purpose, both of you. Not just your experiences as a younger, successful anchor, Joan, but also the trials and tribulations of what you went through and how you had to work. And you've created this purpose through all of these books and platforms. And now, Jamie, you're doing it in such a big way. you know you're helping people. And I hope that that gratitude, grateful for not just what you've been through and what you've turned your own life into, but all the things you're doing for others.
And I love that the blueprint that you speak about is available for people to follow. It's a lifetime of what we're talking about is trying to find a way to walk this life in a manner that is really healthy, not just what's the word, not just abstinent, not just not using, but really healthy
Yeah.
with all of the pieces to our lives, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, socially, in every way. So I love that you guys are modeling that, doing that, and maybe we can help some other people do that too.
The cool thing about what I get to do on my podcast is when I talk about gratitude, I was worried that people are going to say, "Well, yeah, it's easy to be grateful. Look, you have a nice life. You have a hopeful husband. You have this, that, and the other." I get all of that now because I did the work. And that's
Right.
my whole point. And
Yeah.
so, what I'm able to illustrate on the podcast, yesterday I was in the studio doing an interview with a suicide attempt survivor. He tried to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. Last week, I was in the studio interviewing Amanda Klutz, who lost her husband during COVID. I was interviewing another woman that day who lost a baby at 8 months old. So, what I hear a lot as pushback to living with an attitude of gratitude is, yeah, but if you knew my life,
Right.
if you knew what I was up against. And my response is that's exactly when you need the practice most of all, because we
Mhm.
can get through anything. And the people that I've interviewed, that is what I am here to prove is that the evidence is on the other side. And in fact, if you get through it with gratitude and grace, you will actually be better off. The same way I feel that I'm better off having been an addict and now being in recovery, people come to the other side of hard challenges and they end up better, more grateful, just seeing the world in a different way.
It's so true. It's so true. No matter what my circumstances, no matter what the tragedy that befalls me.
It's not the toxic positivity thing. It's the being grateful, all the little nuggets you've brought forward for everybody. So we're going to be changing lives. We're going to be helping people with this message as you're trying to do and all the platforms both of you are involved in.
Changing lives, but also I like my own life to be changed. And I got to tell you, knowing you two, understanding both the work that you have done, are doing, and gonna do. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
beautiful. So I want to take a page from your book and be more heliotropic, as we say.
I will tell you that I'm writing my autobiography, and it's a big task to take on, to recount your entire life. But it's been a very, very interesting experience. And just going back and reliving it. And I just find that by writing about it, it's made me even more grateful for the life that I've been able to have. And then also, it makes you stop and reflect and say, am I everything that I could be? And I don't mean that I have one more show to host in me. I mean, as a person, have I like really reached that goal or couldn't I make myself better? And I remember in the last book I wrote, which is Why Did I Come Into This Room? The last chapter, which if I remember correctly was I want to be cremated as my last chance for a smoking hot body. And in that chapter, I had people write their own eulogy and design their own funeral and say, okay, so there you are, you're in the coffin. Here come everybody from the office. Are they saying, gee, I wish you would have spent more time at the office? Like, here come the family members. What are they saying about you? What do you hope that they would be saying about you as an individual? And whatever that is that you hope that they would be eulogizing about you, that becomes your
Be there.
bar. That becomes your goalposts that you need to get to. And to me, it's just a great way to kind of redesign your timeline and
Mhm.
say, this is what I want to work on to be the best kind of person I can be so that people remember me that way.
And I just want to apologize. That's my dog barking in the background. So that's YOLO. You only live once is her name. Her name is designed to remind me of what you just said. And your thought about our eulogy is the whole point of what it means to be
Yeah.
the sun and not the salt. That's exactly how all of us want to live our life, in that way.
Yeah.
How do you want to be perceived? How do you want to make people feel? What do you want to do in this life so that people say that's the clearest blueprint?
Let us ask then, what are a couple of those things for each of you that you hope people will say about you?
What, do I go first because I'm
You're going
closer to
first.
the end?
I think because you brought up this great topic, so
I want
it's your
Yes.
I
book.
want people to
Yes.
say that I was kind and compassionate and caring about others and a good wife and mother and daughter to my mom. And I want them to, I think, remember me as a trailblazer who dared to cross into territory that others thought maybe I shouldn't cross into, like all the men in broadcasting, and that I dared to ask a television network to let me bring my baby to work because I wanted to breastfeed and I knew I should go to work. And back in those days is very different from now. There weren't a million kinds of breast pumps. Like, you needed the baby with you. And I figured,
Yep.
what the heck? Let me just ask. And so they said yes. And sometimes you just have to you have to know what your priorities are. And a lot of people don't stop and say, what are my priorities? It's a really good place to start. And then, like, for anybody out there, especially women who are in the workplace, if you get pregnant and you like walk in and you say to your boss, hey, I'm having a baby, you know what they're thinking? Oh God, so how am I going to replace this person? Who's going to do this work?
Yep.
Women should realize that it's not the boss's problem. It's yours to figure out how you don't make it your boss's problem. But be honest. I was honest with Good Morning America. I said, I'm going to give you 150%. In return, I have little kids and I'm going to be at their recitals. I'm going to be at their parent teacher conferences. And as long as we can find the middle on this and find the compromise and live together, you have to understand your ratings are going up because I'm like a working mom and people out there in middle America relate to it. And by the way, these little kids come with it. As long as you let me be the mom I want to be, I will give you my heart and soul, and work harder for you. And it forged a really good working arrangement.
Set a good example. Did. So what about you, Jamie?
I mean, that was so beautifully said. What else is there left to say?
What you
You know,
want.
look,
What do you
yeah,
want to say about you?
Come on, you're
yes.
helping
I've
people
always
so much.
And I've always just said, I want to take up my space on this earth with kind, happy, sparkly energy and just sprinkle fairy dust where I go. I'm proud of being a mom. I love being a boy mom. So I want to be remembered as being a warm, kind mom, but also a fun mom. And I'm really working on that. I think as a working mother, finding that balance is really hard, because we work so much, especially these days with being connected to the
All
internet
the time.
24/7. You have to be even that much more intentional. You have to be to make sure that you're balancing. And what my mom just said at the end, there's that poem about the dash, right? So on your tombstone, there's when you were born, when you die, and what are you going to do with the dash? And there's a book by Bonnie Ware is her name? The 5 Regrets of the Dying. She was a hospice nurse.
Yeah.
And so many people on their deathbed, they say, I wish I had done what I wanted to do and not what was expected of me. Most people said, I wish I worked less. That's a big one. We're all a work in progress. I just want to help people feel a little less anxious in this world and help them show up a little happier, a little more confident, and help myself along the way. Because I believe very deeply that we only keep what we have by giving it away. And so it's all cyclical. And that's what I'm working on every day.
Love that.
Me too. I got nothing more to ask you guys. I'm just honored and thrilled that you agreed to do this. And thank you so much for doing what you're doing, being who you are. And as you said, Jamie, giving it away, being generous. One of the qualities of being the sun, of being heliotropic, is being generous. And thank you for your generosity of soul and spirit. And we're going to help a ton of people. And you've already helped us. Thank you, guys.
Yes, we're grateful. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.